The QRP Labs QMX. Does the M stand for multimode or mega radio? Let's take a look at it next on AA3K On The Go. So back in end of June 2025, it's now about the middle of July 2026, I decided to order a QRP Labs QMX transceiver because it was now including sideband as a capability of the radio. It was originally designed for that, but the firmware to support it had not been released until earlier in 2025. And I decided also to have QRP Labs pre-assemble it, and they use an assembly house in Turkey. So they're typically running 4 to 5 months on the assembly orders. So I ordered it at the end of June. I received the radio end of November, beginning of December. I really wasn't too worried about that. It was closer to Christmas, so it was a bit of a present to myself. And I've taken it out on a few trips and in the backyard, and I've made about 2 or 3 dozen CW contacts with it. I have not really tried this radio in phone mode yet, but I do have a microphone that will work with it. And this has been a very, very pleasing radio to operate. One thing, it does not have a built-in speaker, so I have to use either an external speaker, which I really don't have one, or earbuds, which is what I do typically use. But let's take a look at this in comparison to the true SDX, and I'm going to go a little bit over the various features that are built into this radio. All right, as we take a quick look at the QMX versus the true SDX, we see that they are almost identical in sizes. The true SDX is just a little bit taller, just a little bit shorter, and then the width between the two is the QMX is just a little bit taller. And I'll put all the dimensions up on the screen. Now, since the QMX is a metal case, and typically you'll have a 3D printed case for the true SDX, the QMX weighs in at 7.9 ounces or 223 grams, and the true SDX weighs in at 4.8 ounces, 137 grams. Getting close to being double for the QMX, but again, this has the end plates on it to give protection for the knobs here, and that's adding just a little bit, but this metal case does help get the heat out of the radio. The other big difference between it, the true SDX has a very small electroluminescent display, which is very difficult to read in bright sunlight. The last time I used the true SDX, it was quite bright out, and I was covering over it and getting my face down as close as I could to the display to read the frequency and other information. The QMX has a nice large LCD display, very easy to read in any lighting conditions. It is backlit, and thus the CWD code is also very larger, but not as fancy things can be done with the LCD display as compared to the one on the true SDX. However, Hans has done many custom characters that display in different locations, so yes, you can get a bunch of information. Now I'm going to do a quick run through on the menus and what most of them do, but first I am going to, just for safety, connect a dummy load so I don't accidentally transmit into nothing. And the QMX does not have a built-in speaker, so I am going to put a pair of earbuds plugged into here just to make sure there's a load for the audio to go to, so I don't cause any problems to the internal circuitry. And I am going to be using the INU power supply, power bank with this 12-volt trigger cable. Plug it in. It's generating 12 volts. Now just plug it into the radio and press the volume button, and on it goes. So you have a knob for volume and another knob for tuning, and it is step tuning across the different hundreds of thousands, tens thousands, thousands, hundreds, tens of hertz, which admittedly not my favorite tuning, but it gets the job done, and you don't need a very fine VFO as much as you would have on much larger rigs. Now, the volume knob also has a push button. So if you do a single press, it will change the mode. So now it went from CW to Digi, the upper sideband, lower sideband, and back to CW. And this has version 1.3.002 software in it, which is the last full release of the software. The current 1.4 series is in beta, and that even adds AM mode to this radio. You double click the volume, and then you can change the volume and select what band. Now, I had this built for 15, 17, and you see I'm turning this and it's not changing the reading. 20 meters, again, did it again. 40 meters and 60 meters. So you can get this built for different batches of bands, and I'll list them in the description what can be done. And eventually it will time out of that mode. And finally, if you do a long press, you will turn off the radio. And being that the INU is a smart power bank, it will turn off its output after a few seconds of not seeing any significant current draw on the USB-C port. On the tune side, you also have a single press where it's underlined will be the digit that you're changing for frequency. I have this set up to change 10,000 kilohertz, 1,000 of kilohertz. This will change it in 500 hertz steps, hundreds of hertz, and then finally tens of hertz. Radio is in CW mode. If you double tap the tune button, it'll bring up the memories that can be pre-programmed with CW messages to send. So you can see I have a CQ POTA, CQ just general, CQ SOTA, though there's no SOTA mountains quite near me. Just a QRL question mark is a frequency busy. And then the CQ tiles for the new tiles on the air program, which I have been dabbling in. Now, if you just want to send these memories once, you press the tune button and it will do so. If you press the left button, it will start sending the messages up to a programmable amount of times, or infinite if that's what you want, with a delay. So I have set to send the messages up to 10 times with 7 seconds between the messages, giving me enough time to listen to anybody replying and ending the automatic CQ. And if you program the last two memories, you can have that information displayed on the startup splash screen. If you press the tune button with one of these on, it will just send that message once, which is very handy for the QRL. I could just do that 3 times. If it is doing, it will show an M if it's playing it from memory. And if you want to end it, you can always hit this button here. If you press the left button once, you can adjust the keyer speed for use with an iambic paddle. If you press it twice, you have RIT control, and here I just have it set for hundredths, and you can go negative or positive up to 9 kilohertz. And if you long press it, you get into the menu system, and we're going to come back to that shortly. On the right side, if you press it quickly, you'll shift between VFO A and VFO B, and you can set split mode through the menu system. If you double click it quick, you will now go through the preset frequencies. And I only have one frequency preset in here, and that's 7239. I don't remember exactly why I did that. Finally, if you do a long press, you'll swap the A and B frequencies. Okay, let's take a look at the menu system here. Long press of the left button, you have an audio menu. You can adjust the AGC, the volume step. In this case, I've just left it at the default 1 dB. Audio attenuation. If you have a really sensitive speaker or headphones, you can throw in some constant attenuation on the audio to keep it under control and not blast your eardrums to pieces. If you get down to minimum volume, outright just mute the audio. And that's it for there. Next is for CW. You have your CW keyer controls, including what keyer mode. I personally prefer iambic B, but it does support iambic A, B, and automatic. You can swap the left and right sides of the paddles if you're using somebody else's paddle and they like the dots on the right paddle versus the left, which is kind of the standard. I just do dots on left, dashes on the right. Keyer weight, so instead that will adjust the dot to dash ratio, where a dash is normally essentially 3 dots in length. And auto space, that if when you do a break between characters, it'll automatically put a space of about 3 dots in there, but not actually transmit those dots. And semi-QSK auto, either do full QSK where the receiver switches back in almost between your dots and your dashes, or there's a delay between the two. And you can adjust the semi-custom semi-QSA time. And that should, for me, and you have several different settings here, but I personally just prefer leaving it off and having the radio stay and transmit until I stop keying anything for a few moments. And to go into any of these menus, you press the left button, you make your changes, and then to get out, you just press the right button. And practice mode, if you turn that on, that will let you send CW but not actually transmit, and the built-in CW decoder will also decode what you send, so you can practice and make sure you get yourself into a good sending pattern. And if you want to use a straight key, just plug it in, and for both tip and ring, but you can set that to be just the tip of the plug, the ring of the plug, both. So sending it to both and just sticking in a straight key, everything will work and key off of as a straight key will. And GPS protection, the paddle port here on the side is also, if you're using this with its built-in whisper capabilities, and if you plug in a GPS serial connection, it will prevent the radio from automatically trying to transmit as those pulses come in as CW. And key from USB DTR. If you have the serial port connected to the computer, you can use the data terminal ready signal as a keying source from your computer. And we're through there. CW decoder, several settings, and I have not adjusted any of these. Noise blank, speed average, amplitude average, enable it during receive as transmit, or you can select one or the other, if not both. Enable editing, so while it's receiving, you can go in and use the paddles to actually set values into entries within the radio here. Preferred pro signs, I've said no. If you wanted to show an SK as an SK or a VA, in this case I just leave it as an SK, and back to the noise blanker. You can adjust your CW passband. I have not had any particular reason to change it from 300 Hertz, and it has been working well for me, and you can center it in the passband at, say, whatever, 750 down several different values here. These have worked just fine for me. The auto offset tone will adjust the CW offset as well as the tone that you hear if you adjust the filter parameters. Back to the beginning of the CW menu. And you have several different settings for digital. Does it do automatic Vox on and off when it hears the signal come in from the computer? The rise threshold, fall threshold. And I have not done any sort of digital operation with this radio, so I'll let the viewer go through the manual and understand these things. For sideband, again, I haven't done any voice operation with this radio. I have gone in and adjusted the mic gain from the default value of the 65, and that was from another video that I saw and said that worked very well. As we went through here, I don't have any compression turned on, but you did notice one of the settings here was input external mic. There is a microphone built into the main board, but it has not yet been enabled for the radio. This radio does not have a dedicated PTT button like the true SDX has in the lower right there. So Hans has not enabled that, and then you just have a external microphone for using sideband mode on this radio. Whoops, presets is where you would set frequencies in the various channels. Messages is where I have the various CQ messages and the QRL set up. But when you get through here, you can see interval, so I have it set for 7 seconds between sending the message, and the timing will start when the message, the last dit or dot is sent. And then I say repeat up to 10 times. If you set this to 0, it will repeat infinite number of times. But that just helps me just make sure, in case I kind of fall asleep, the radio will stop at a certain point. VFO, you can say what your VFO mode is. VFO A and B enabled. If you wanted to do split, I currently have that disabled. VFO tune rates, so I've turned off the 10 megahertz tuning step. I can turn each of them on and off. I have the 1 megahertz turned off, 100 kilohertz turned off, but you can see I have the 10 kilohertz and lower turned on. RIT tune rates, I do have 1 hertz, 10, 100, 500, 1 kilohertz. And you same way as you do the tuning of the radio, you get the underscore underneath the digit you want to change, and then you adjust the tune knob. This is just the default value for the phase lock loop denominator maximum, and that's it for that. You can use this as a whisper beacon with a GPS connected to it for timing. You can adjust for the display and display the voltage, which I have turned on. Battery full is 12 volts, battery step is 1 volt. And that's it there. Battery display. Power SDR display, I say graphs where the top half will be the power being transmitted and the bottom half will, on a small, not necessarily 100% accurate, but enough for a trend, will show as the amount of dots lit up. S-meter display, you can have it set as the graph, and the update interval is every 50 milliseconds. AGC display is off. Since it's off, the AGC dB per bar is not important. And back to the graph. The double click, I have that set at 400, and I'm just going to do that to kind of, so that should be a 400 millisecond between the double clicks, the double taps of these buttons for the system, even these buttons, to say, okay, a double click was done. If you want the cursor to blink where it's displayed, and if you want a custom splash screen at startup, and I have not done that on this radio. You can display a clock, it can be set manually or through GPS, but I do not have that turned on. And I used a good old comma for the delimiter. That is the North American standard as opposed to the European standard, which would use a decimal point, and then the comma for where the North Americans would have a decimal point. Backlight is on. If you turn that off, you will save a little bit of power from your power source. And mode as a single character, so like S for sideband, C for CW, or doing it such as the custom bitmap that Hans created, and you see a CW there. I've left that as the fancy CW because it's just easier. And the battery display, you can do several different things as voltage, full voltage, battery step. Power SDR display, again, back to the double click. Protection, this will protect the finals. If you end up with more than right now, more than 11.5 volts to the finals, the radio will stop transmitting to protect them. This radio is sensitive to its input voltage. It does want to only see no more than 12 volts, not the typical amateur 13.8 volts. And that's why I got the trigger cable specifically to go with this power supply. It will run down to 9 volts also. If the SWR gets too high, it will automatically turn off transmit. The threshold here is 3:1 SWR. And you can select that just pressing a button will take it out of protection mode, or it could be set as a timer, or go automatically back to receive, or no protection at all. If you go back to receive, it will be locked in that mode until you power cycle the radio so you can definitely check your antenna as to what's going on. And since I'm not using the timeout, that's set to 0. Has a built-in tune mode, so it'll set itself to 50% of max power. So you can make adjustments to your antenna and protect the finals in the radio here. And back to GPS protection, that if you plug it in, it won't try to key the radio. If the supply voltage is too high, it will prevent going into transmit. And minimum voltage for the radio is 7. Max voltage is 13. 12 volts is preferred. You can configure several things. I'm going to skip this experimental. The temperature compensated crystal oscillator frequency is 25 megahertz. It doesn't vary a lot in its production according to Hans, so leave that alone. I've set the band limits to ITU region 2, which is North America, and no receive outside the bands. The computer-aided transceiver timeout has been enabled at 120 seconds. Now, the CAT timeout is particularly handy if you're using digital modes such as WSJT-X, where it uses a CAT command from the computer to the radio here to enable transmit. Basically, if it does not receive a switch to receive within the amount of time in this menu option, the radio will automatically cease transmitting. So the CAT RU and RD is the computer controller of RAT up and down. It can be the parameter supplied is taken as an absolute value to set as the RAT, or it can be set as relative from the current RAT setting. A little bit confusing. I typically don't do that for my portable operations with the QRP radio. I'm just going to leave it as absolute. Do I want the KY command on the CAT to be exactly identical to the original Kenwood TS480 or the enhanced version that Ellicraft and that developed that the QRP Labs also can do? I'll leave it as the enhanced version. IQ mode is where you can send out the actual digital data. This is a software-defined radio, and you can send out the actual IQ digital data into an external computer to do demodulation. I'm not set the time. I've had this radio now running for 25 minutes. Real-time clock is in software. You can also set it for QMX real-time clock on the Plus model, which is the larger version of this radio, and it does have a built-in clock with the battery. And I'm not going to go into the GPS and serial ports, but besides the actual USB-C port you have to connect to your computer, there's many other serial ports that are actually being used in operation from the other ports here. GPS is shared with the paddle and such. And advanced configuration, well, that goes a little bit beyond the purposes of this video. Accessibility. Using the tab number menus is if you have an external terminal program connected to the radios, you can just press tab and a menu number and it'll jump directly to that menu. I'll demonstrate in another video how to do that. That's really handy. It makes it a lot easier to set up memories and presets, and you can just type it in rather than have to kind of do the old arcade game, select A, then B, then C, then D, then hit enter, and then go to the next letter and hit enter, which is what this radio has to do currently if you're just doing it through the front panel here. You can have a simple terminal interface or a more complicated one. I've left it to the more complicated, tremendous amount of information you can get to from the computer. And finally, experimental features, which I'm not going to go into here. And you do have the ability to test the audio frequency filters, the RF filters, image sweep, and in particular tune SWR and It's set it at 50%, go to the 20 meter band at that frequency and hit enter. And right now, going into the dummy load, my SWR is 1.18. Really handy for testing things and testing antennas quickly in the field. You can sweep and test the low pass filter, but I'm not going to bother doing it. The power amplifier modulator, the ADC IQ, and doing single sideband calibration as well as a microphone test. Diagnostics, GPS viewer, and right back to the beginning. And you can do a whole factory reset, and finally plugging this into a computer through a USB-C cable. When you set the update firmware mode, it'll start looking as just a disk drive on the computer, and then you can copy the new software to it and run the update cycle very quick. The radio came with 1.02 software, and I did the update to 1.03. And when 1.04 is declared stable, I'm going to update to that. As for connectors, obviously RF output port, a PTT connector to go to an external amplifier, USB-C port, paddle inputs and GPS input, audio output, and power. So a very lightweight radio, just a little bit heavier than the true SDX. And there you have it. The QMX is a very fine radio, and it's performed very well for me so far. I do want to try it in voice mode, but say trying to do a Parks on the Air activation in QRP voice is a little bit difficult. CW and data do tend to get out a lot better because of much narrower bandwidth for the information that's being carried. As compared to the true SDX, the QMX is almost double the weight, but it is essentially the same volume. I am in the weight, I did include the actual protective end rails that I ordered with the radio here. I do like the metal case in terms of being able to dissipate the heat that's generated, particularly by the final amplifier within here. The plastic case of the true SDX does tend to be a bit of an insulator, though I have purchased a kit that will mount the final transistors on an elevated board to give them a little bit more airflow around them and act as a better means of heat dissipation. I have not yet built or installed that kit yet on here. Cool orange color, cool black metal case. There may be cases available that you can 3D print, but I'm not into 3D printing at the current time. Unfortunately, I have seen a couple of user interface bugs in here, and they have not been consistent enough that I can quantify them. I've been in one situation where I was in the menus and for some reason the frequency came back up on the display. So I couldn't see what menu item I was on, but I was adjusting the selections for that menu item underneath it. I finally hit the exit button enough times to get out of that situation, and the operation was the same. As for anything where you need to double click, I have found I went in and made a change and put it back to essentially the default values or whatever value I particularly wanted for the double click timing. That did seem to improve the operation of double click. Now, the latest version of software as of July 2026 is 1.04.002, and that is still in beta testing, and Hans's notes indicate that you will have to do, or installing it will cause a complete factory reset of the radio. So if you have any particular data stored in memory, you probably, or you really should, write it down ahead of time. I think the calibration values are more permanently in here, but I'm going to check on that when I get around to installing that firmware after it becomes an actual release. So really the only downside to this radio is if you do order it pre-assembled, it does take a little while to arrive. I did assemble a QCX, and that took me a little bit of time. And if you have a QMX radio and you have particular thoughts about it, why don't you go ahead, put them in the comments below, and we can continue the discussion there. Hey, this is Mark AA3K. I'll catch you the next time on AA3K on the Go.